Hi, I'm Matthew Goldstein, Chancellor of the City University of New York. Welcome to our program, CUNY Honors. I am very pleased to have with me two student scholars who represent a new generation of CUNY students. These two students, named 2005 Rhodes Scholars, are the embodiment of the CUNY experience. I once referred to the Rhodes Scholarship as the apex, the Mount Olympus of all scholarships. I don't think that this is an exaggeration. Each year, 32 are chosen, and this year, 2 are from the City University of New York. Eugene, is it true that your father taped a sign to your front door that said, "Home of the Rhodes Scholarships for 2005?
Yes, it is.
Lev, I heard that you thought the Rhodes Scholarship was for refined individuals, people who would drink tea with their pinky up and come from an Ivy League school. That description is not exactly who you are. Eugene Shenderoff is a chemistry major at Brooklyn College in their BA MD program. He is the president of the Brooklyn College chess team, a 3-letter winner on the men's tennis team, a member of the Golden Key International Honor Society at Brooklyn College, and a director of the Brooklyn College Emergency Medical Squad. Lev Shvirdov is also majoring in chemistry at the City College of New York. He is a winner of the Goldwater Fellowship in Science. Lev is a permanent member of the Glassnot Public Foundation to the United Nations, and he was elected student-governed president of his class at City College. Both of these students emigrated from the Soviet Union. Eugene, Lev, welcome. It's good to see you both.
Good to be here. Thank
Eugene, you chose to come to Brooklyn College. Why that decision? I'm sure you had lots of options, but what about Brooklyn College attracted you?
The finances, the fact that for my family who had emigrated from the former Soviet Union, specifically Ukraine, in 1990, the finances were an attractive offer to attend Brooklyn College. In addition, I heard from some of the former alums of Brooklyn College that in their heyday it was a great college, and to this day they kept in contact with some of the professors. So both the faculty and the financial opportunity was a very motivating factor.
Now you applied and were admitted to a very coveted program, the joint BA MD program. Could you describe a little about how that joint relationship works? Are you accepted to medical school immediately at the time of your application, or?
Yes. Upon interviewing, you basically interview for both Downstate Medical School and the Brooklyn College undergraduate program. And once admitted to Brooklyn College, you are guaranteed a seat at Downstate Medical School upon matriculation from the undergrad portion, as long as you keep specified conditions such as a 3.5 GPA and get other predefined conditions.
I see. And I'm going to come back to how you plan to integrate medical education with your interest in pure science. Lev, you came here as a young boy, at about 11 or 12 years old, if I recall,
Right.
And obviously circumstances occurred over that time. Why the City College of New York?
Well, it's actually, the story is quite similar to Eugene's story. Certainly finances were a major element, and back then actually tuition was $3,200, and that was something that we could afford without actually going into loans, and Pell and the TAP grants would supplement my entire tuition. But the second element was much more important. That was the personal element. I graduated from the Ethical Culture Fieldston School in Riverdale, and it was a different type of society there. Just the people were from more upscale backgrounds, and I was an immigrant student who barely spoke English at the time. And I tried to find a support base for myself, and I found that support base with the faculty and the good friends who brought us there. And the faculty I found at Fieldston, some of them were from City College. And when I was applying for the colleges, they said, go to my alma mater. It has taught me well, it has served me well, and it has a significant historical point in American history in being the first public institution of higher education, and that meant a lot to me. Then also my participation with our science teams brought me to City College several times, and my chemistry teacher, Ms. Snyder, introduced me to the Associate Dean at City College of Science, who then essentially recruited me to the chemistry department. So I felt at home, I felt welcome, I felt wanted, and I chose to go there.
So at Fieldston, there were some advocates for the City College because the teachers that you had were trained there, and they obviously had a good experience.
Absolutely.
So now you arrive on the City College campus. Did you have an idea at the time, a thirst to study science, and in particular chemistry? Was that molded a little earlier, or?
Well, that came out, I think, also from the immigrant experience. I could not communicate very well, so I found a home with numbers. I found a home with new symbols where we were all in an equal playing field. We had to learn the periodic table. And I felt very comfortable being finally equal with everyone else in the classroom. Same opportunities, same level of expertise. And I arrived wanting to be a chemist. And City College really took that desire and took it to the next level. They said, not only do you have to learn things in the classroom, you should do research. And I heard that on the very first day at City College in general chemistry. And I followed through with that, and it has brought me to where I am today.
So the faculty were encouraging you right at the early stages. We want to get you into the laboratory, take a look at our experiments, work with us, and you became a bench scientist right at the very beginning.
Well, not really a bench scientist. I first went into theory.
Right.
I spent 4 years in theory and protein, 3 years in theory and proteins. But the faculty said, look, if you want to be a true chemist, you have to do research. It wasn't the question of, do you want to do it with me, someone else? You just have to do it, period. Because otherwise, what are you going to do afterwards? What are you going to do for graduate school? What are you going to do later? And I said, graduate school? I'm a freshman in college. And they said, no, graduate school is the next step. Right now, you have to start working. And after the next 4 or 5 years, you have to start thinking about, you have to be in a graduate school and with a sense of direction.
So they were forcing you to think strategically.
Right.
And that's very important. Eugene, let's get back to you. You now are at Brooklyn College. You've been accepted into the BA MD program. I imagine that program is, what, 7 years?
It's 8.
It's 8 years.
Full 4 years undergrad and full 4 years in medical school.
So what happened along the way? I mean, you became a chess player, or I'm sure you were a chess player before, but you honed your skills. You became a tennis player. So you started to branch out to get a more broad-based education. What were the early experiences in terms of your classes that led you to think in much broader horizons and opened up your eyes to things that you didn't think of before?
Well, I think it's sort of referring back to actually the motto of the BMD program. It's specifically geared to give physicians in training, if you consider it undergrads physicians in training already, a more humanistic background. So we're encouraged actually to major outside of science, actually. So when since I'm majoring in chemistry, I actually am minoring in non-sciences as well. That's a precondition. And a lot of the faculty I had some great professors for sociology, for some of my philosophy classes. They really introduced a new perspective in terms of studying philosophers like Kant and Hume, who I had never really touched upon in high school, and sort of shifting the perspective from science per se overall to how everything ties into one another. So it was a very interesting experience at the time.
Was there an epiphany at some point with a particular professor that just sort of opened up your ideas and perspectives on big things, a little different than you thought before? Any ones that you want to mention on air today that really touched you in very special ways?
I think to a large extent, every professor I've encountered so far, I think with pretty much no exceptions, has contributed a little piece to the big epiphany, as one would put it, in their own special way. I mean, I had a wonderful professor for my initial chemistry professor. This is actually how I went into chemistry. I wasn't sure which field I would major in. I wasn't sure if it was going to be biology, inorganic chemistry, biochemistry, and I had a professor named David Goldberg for the beginner chemistry courses. I believe he started teaching in Brooklyn College in the 50s, so he was one of their veteran professors. He actually retired after I had him. And one day we were sitting in his office, and he was we were chatting about his class and just in general my freshman experience thus far. I was first semester freshman. And somehow we got on the topic of a major, and I said, well, I've been contemplating maybe biology, maybe nutrition, maybe chemistry. And he said, do you like chemistry? I said, yeah, I guess so. Took out the paperwork and said, let's sign you up.
Well, he actually saw talent and a spark there, and I'm sure this was a great setup, but good for him. Lev, the Rhodes Scholarship, at what point in your career at City College did the idea that this would be an opportunity that could be made available to you, how did that come about? Who talked to you about it? How does Lev Shvidov hear about being a Rhodes Scholar?
Well, essentially, all this time I've been following scholarships online, at fastweb.com. And because I always was looking for scholarships, I needed financial support and all the talk and being aware of all the talk up in Albany about cutting taps, keeping tap, Pell. That's on every student's mind. And, about 7 days before the deadline, I looked online and said, well, you have the criteria for the scholarship. So I walk into our honor center, who in about a week put together the Coldwater application with me. I walk in and they were sitting around the table. I said, oh, great, the dream team is here. I think I should apply for the Rhodes Scholarship. And they said, well, how much time do we have? I said, 6 days. I said, okay, we can do it. And that's how the dream was born.
Isn't that wonderful? So the faculty were really there for you.
Everyone was there for me.
They really helped you along the way.
They absolutely have. The staff at the Honor Center, in the Provost's office, the faculty. When I just walked up to them, I said, could you write me a letter? They said, well, how much time do we have? Is it more than a week? I said, well, you have 12 days, I have 6. I said, okay, that's more than enough for you.
What are the, I'm sure our audience is not familiar with the criteria that are required for consideration to be a Rhodes Scholar. Could you share some of those criteria with us?
I guess one of the most important elements is being well-rounded. You have to be not only a scientist, you have to be also a social activist. And your activism needs to go beyond participation in local politics like student government or with a local council member. I think what they're looking for is for a global leader to fight the world's fight, as the quote goes. And I have certainly done that, and others who were in the running for this scholarship also have done that. And that is something that I think brought all of us together, a sense of global urgency and it's kind of a global vision that every candidate shares.
And Eugene, obviously you had similar kinds of assistance, I would imagine, from Brooklyn College. What was the guiding principles that some of the faculty said you need to adhere to, and the strengths that you need to amplify for the reviewers and so forth?
Well, I think the way to sum this up is the day after I found out that I had gotten a scholarship, and I told the faculty, some of them said, well, look at that. We didn't embellish anything and you still got it. That's the way to go. Throughout the process, I mean, again, just like Lev put it, the faculty at Brooklyn College, especially in the scholarships office, and the professors who worked with me, they were all very helpful. Without them, I wouldn't have been able to submit the application. And throughout the process, they constantly kept saying, let's keep this the way it is. There's no reason to embellish it even slightly. I mean, in the end, it can only hurt you. So I think we kept it as down to earth as we could. They even kept, at one point, I remember they said, well, your application looks good, but maybe you should actually try to say a little more than you're saying. You're probably being a little too humble. So they were very helpful.
You know, the message that the both of you are saying, and you've said it over and over again in many public settings, is how extraordinary the faculties are at the City University of New York. They really care about students, and they'll go that extra distance, and certainly that's been affirmed here as well. Let's talk about the drama. You now submit your applications. What happens next? Lev, what was the next step?
You wait.
Submitted? Well, all right, so you wait, and then what happens? Who called you? What was the way in which?
Well, there was no phone call, there was nothing. We got this email, a one-liner, which I thought was a joke at first. I had no idea. It said Weber@sloan.org, and it said, due to your preliminary review of your preliminary credentials, come to Rockefeller Center. at 6 p.m. And I was like, okay, this is a sick joke. This is really a sick joke. And it doesn't say Rhodes Scholarship. It doesn't say Review Board, State Review, nothing. So, you know, I said, let me write an email reply saying, you know, ask what should I wear type of thing. And I replied and I got a 2-word answer, business professional. I was like, okay, this is the real thing. And so I show up about on time, you know, about comfortably late, 5-10 minutes. So I walk in the room and there's all the other candidates. And the first thing that really struck me is that everyone was just as nervous as I was. So there was no major drama for me. I felt very comfortable. We were all like shaking a little. And
how many were in that room?
15.
15.
What also made it a bit easier is, well, 2 elements. One is that one of my high school classmates was there too. She's at Pomona College. So she was in the 15. And what also made it easier is that a person who's now a good friend of mine, Ravi Gupta from Binghamton, just, you know, he was very nervous. He was like hugging himself, trying to contain himself. He just came up to me and said, okay, I'm Ravi, who are you? You know, just to keep a conversation going, trying to get something out. And that really helped a lot because he broke the ice right away, didn't give me a second to think about anything, to consider all the different option strategies, who do I talk to first. He got that out of me, got all the anticipation out there, and I felt very comfortable just standing in a very tiny room, mind you, very small little library around a huge table that took up 90% of the room, and just talking to all the people. So I have to say thank you, Ravi.
And Eugene, you were one of the 15 in that room. Your experience sort of the same, sort of nervousness, energy. So what happened that night? I mean, this was in the evening, early evening. You're all assembled in a room. What physically happens next?
Well, at first it's just basically all the 15 of us standing around and talking for about 5-10 minutes, and then all the interviewers, I think except one, came into the room and started to talk to us in groups. Some of them took us aside individually, and they wanted to put, I guess, a face to the paper application. They had our picture with the application, but they wanted to see, was the paper application sort of what they imagined the person would be like.
And this was what day of the week? Do you remember?
This was a Tuesday night.
All right. So then you leave, and then what happens?
Well, we don't leave.
You don't leave.
Towards the end of the evening, the secretary for the state committee, Mr. Weber, said, well, here's a hat. Well, he couldn't find a hat, but it was a mug. He put some time slots in there that started from 8 a.m. to about, what was it, 11 or 12 for the interviews, one just you and the committee, and said just reach and pull a time. So I was praying that I wouldn't get the 8 a.m. spot. I get 10:20, and then we leave. And you come back when your time is called for the full day activity of
Was
interviews.
that the next day?
That was the next day.
Okay.
So I got there at 10:20. Of course, they're running behind schedule, you know, and people were coming out, you know. So I took up a game, you know. I always want to do something, otherwise you're just sitting staring at something. So I found myself staring at the clock, which was very comfortably located right in front of me on the opposite wall in a very small room. And I would just time how long people were in there. And it, you know, it didn't indicate anything, but it was just, you know, we just
It gave you,
track.
it parameterized the problem for
Right.
you. You got to sort of sense what was
Right.
ahead of you.
But what made it very comfortable, the environment, even though, you know, it's competitive and prestigious and all those elements, is that the people were really great. The people who represented the state of New York, I thought, were just extraordinary. And by the end of maybe even the evening before and throughout the day, everyone was convinced that no matter who got the award, that person would be deserving. Because even though this is just the first step in a two-step process, we knew that someone was going to get it from New York, because all of them came from working backgrounds. Quite a few were immigrants. What made it extraordinary, out of the 15, 8 were chemists. So we were well represented, and the people were just great. They were really great. The attitude in the room was positive. Conversations were just very exciting and very challenging intellectually. And we were just happy to be there and just went with the flow.
Nobody can be happier than, obviously, your family, but all of us in the university are obviously deeply proud of what the two of you accomplished. You both leave in August or September? September for Oxford. What is the college that you're going to be, do you know the college at Oxford that you're going to be associated with?
We've applied, but we're not sure whether we're going to be going to the one we've applied to.
Okay, and that is That's not based on merit or anything.
No,
That's about
it's decided by the warden of the Rhodes
all
House.
right. Okay. And do you are the curriculum? You're both going to be studying for a D-Phil, which is a Doctor of Philosophy that is given in Britain more than it is here in the United States. And how long of a program is that for your D-Phil, approximately? Do you have a sense of what the length of that program
It's
is?
supposedly no more than 4 years, so most of them are done in about 3, and I believe after 4 you're actually kicked out, so you have to complete it within 4.
And the final thing, of course, is a dissertation that is accepted by the faculty. You, Lev, you want to go and be a research chemist, I take it. And Eugene, you're interested in research as well, but you also have expressed an interest in studying medicine.
Right. I want to have eventually I want to practice clinical medicine and perhaps do clinical research as opposed to perhaps basic benchwork research.
Now, are both of you going to be studying a similar curriculum? I've heard that you're interested in immunology and...
Right. I'm in organic chemistry.
Okay, so yours is different.
I think we're different, yeah.
I think as far apart on the chemistry field as one can get and still be within chemistry.
Okay, that's really... So what happens after the end of the 4 years with your D-Phil? That's when you're going to start medical school?
Yes.
Do you have a sense of the kind of research that you're interested in at this point?
Well, for the last year or so, I've been working on aerosol chemistry, which deals with pollutants in the air, deals with health issues such as learning disabilities and asthma, which is very prevalent, and the problems are growing in urban settings.
Urban America, sure.
Right, and particularly in New York and Harlem, where City College is located. And I really was interested in continuing that research at Oxford. Unfortunately, they don't study aerosols. So what I proposed to study was to synthesize crystalline structures of aerosols at different conditions, ranging in temperatures and pressures, and to look at the configurations of those crystalline patterns. What that would tell us is when someone captures a crystal out of the air that we breathe, it would tell them what the source of the pollutant was, because they do depend on temperature ranges and pressure ranges, so that they could optically detect whether it's an industrial pollutant, engine exhaust, or some other form of deep earth element. So hopefully that proposal will be accepted, and that is in the field of inorganic chemistry, and that is what I'm going to pursue. But eventually, I do want to go back to aerosols. I do want to address the social aspect of this study, and which would hopefully lead to some legislation and authoring some legislation in the United States and across the world.
What extraordinarily important work is, and I think that is fabulous that you're going to pursue that. Eugene, are you looking at an academic medical career of teaching in a medical school and practicing medicine at the same time? Is that what you, and doing research?
Potentially that might end up being the case, so an academic hospital, but again, it's so far in the future that at this point they don't really know.
Well, we've established that you're both strategic thinkers, so I'm trying to get you a little further down the line.
Well, when you combine doing research in terms of medicine and then as well as practicing, the fact of perhaps teaching later on it's not that far-fetched, so it may turn out that I will be teaching some of the subjects in a medical school related to medicine.
One last question before we have to end, and I could go on for hours with the two of you because you're both so fascinating and so interested in what you're going to do. I assume both of you have done research with some of your professors over the 4 years that you've been at City University. Have you penned your name to any papers at all, or do you see any of that happening at this point before you leave?
Well, I spent 3 years in theory, and to put out a theory paper challenging an experimental result was rather challenging. Unfortunately, that did not materialize, but I'm in the process of putting out a paper on experimental science on the aerosols. Hopefully that'll be done within the next month or so.
And I hope you're going to come back to City University when you have your credentials, because we're going to love to offer you a position when you finish.
If you give me a carte blanche, I'll be there.
Well, I don't give anybody carte blanche, but I'm sure the two of you are going to do the kind of work ahead that you've done in the past, and we'll be rooting for the both of you. And I think most importantly, you're going to change the world. And what better thing to do, and to do it in the way that you're choosing right now. I want to thank our audience for being with Eugene Shenderoff and Lev Shvedov, our two Rhodes Scholars, 2005 Rhodes Scholars. Thank you for, on behalf of myself and the university, and that concludes this session of CUNY Honors. Thank you so much.